What's up, everyone? Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Welcome to the semifinals. Big decisions this week. Should you pick up Michael Carter and start him over, let's say, Ashton Genty or Ken Walker? Should you pick up Kirk Cousins and start him over maybe Trevor Lawrence or something like that? Should you pick up Colby Parkinson and start him over Brock Bowers? We do have big decisions to make, and we will help you with those today on our Waiver Wire show. Hello, everyone, and hello to Dave and Jamey. Dave Richard, quick question for you. Surprise question. Hope you're ready. You're not. Who's the number one pick in fantasy drafts next year?
Yeah, I'm definitely not ready for that. It could be Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think people are going to gravitate toward him after the year that he had.
Jamey, quick question for you. First, same question, and then do you want to play Who Has More?
Always love to play Who Has More. The first pick will probably be either Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs.
Okay. It's time for America's 8th favorite fantasy football related game show. Who has more? Who has more carries longer than 20 yards this season? Christian McCaffrey or Jawar Jordan?
Jawar Jordan.
I mean, you've got to say McCaffrey just based on the volume that he's had this year. It just makes sense that it would be him.
Yeah. It's 259 carries. Jordan has 15, but it is Jawar Jordan who had a 50-yard run in Week 15, and Christian McCaffrey has not had a run longer than 20 yards in 2 years. All right. Well, I bring up Jawar Jordan because he is part of the Waiver Wire show. Now, we are expecting him to not be the feature guy. We're expecting Woody Marks. So we'll get to running backs. Before we do that, let's get your top 3 overall priorities. Let's start with Dave. Top 3 priorities on the waiver wire this week.
Well, with Christian McCaffrey not getting a 20-yard run, he stinks. We shouldn't have him on our fantasy teams at all. My favorite waiver wire get is going to be Michael Carter of the Arizona Cardinals, and this is a 2-week get. Looks like he's going to be the lead back moving forward for them. Can catch the ball a little bit as well. Dominated playing time once Zonovan Knight got hurt very early on last week. I would expect him to continue to see a large share as the Cardinals play out the string. My second favorite player is Colby Parkinson, the tight end who's been catching a ton of touchdowns for the Rams. He was second on the team in red zone targets from week 10 on. The guy who was first on the Rams, Davante Adams. I don't think Davante Adams is playing. It means there's going to be a ton of red zone targets for Colby Parkinson at Seattle. It's a revenge game, too. He's a former Seahawk. And then third, this is tricky. It's Luther Burden of the Bears. I'm not sure if Luther Burden is even going to play, but if he does play, we've seen him now 6+ targets, 11+ PPR points each of his last 2 games. There are other wide receivers that I can pivot to off the waiver wire in case Luther Burden does not practice all week, doesn't play by Friday. We're recording this on a Tuesday. We don't know. But Burden has the most upside of any wide receiver that you'll be able to find on the waiver wire in a typical 12-team league.
And how about you, Jamey? Who are your top 3?
The first 2 are the same. So Carter, great opportunity, as Dave alluded to. We'll see what happens with Amari DiMercato. Does he get a bigger role in the passing game? But I think you look at Colby Parkinson, and everything for him last week was a season high. Targets, catches, yards, scored 2 touchdowns. He's been on this touchdown streak lately, but it's been 1 touchdown, so he got the second one there. And I think you just look at Jaden Reed with Christian Watson, most likely not playing on Saturday. We'll see what his health status is, but Reed has been also playing very well of late, and you know what this Packers offense looks like right now. Down Tucker Kraft, down Christian Watson. Those are arguably their 2 best pass catchers. And so what we've seen from Reed, and certainly from the Packers, is they're going to have to be creative to use him and certainly get him going to a higher degree. So I agree with Dave. If Burden is healthy, I would put Burden there, but at this point it's going to be hard to say that Burden is going to be at 100%, especially again with that game on Saturday. So just keep an eye on the injury situation there. But I think Jaden Reed could be a solid number 3 fantasy receiver. Whether you're looking at Burden or looking at Reed, neither of those guys are starters in 2 receiver leagues. But obviously the situation, if you're starting 3 receivers or a flex, both guys have the opportunity to play well in Week 16.
Yeah, I might be spending, by the way, the rest of my fab on Colby Parkinson in our Fantasy Football Today league. Who's my tight end in that league? It's Tyler Warren, and I just don't trust him. I'm sure a lot of you out there, if you have Bowers, if you have Warren, tight ends we'll get to later in the show, but you're not feeling great about some of the top guys this year. Okay, we're going to start with running backs because there were so many running back injuries last week. And Jamey, is Michael Carter head and shoulders above the rest of the list, above Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Jawar Jordan, Jaleel McLaughlin, et cetera? Is Michael Carter just far and away the best option?
I think you have to put him there simply because you've already seen what he's been capable of doing, and I know it hasn't been great. You're not looking at a guy that's going to really dominate in terms of yards per carry, and certainly the Cardinals' running back situation hasn't been great since Trey Benson's injury. We've seen some good moments from Zonovan Knight. We've seen some good moments from Michael Carter and Marty DiMercato. But the matchup is fantastic. As Dave alluded to, they get the Falcons this week and then the Bengals next week. Zonovan Knight is dealing with an ankle injury that may shut him down for the season. So in the case of, let's say, R.J. Harvey, he may play. So that really rules out the Broncos running backs. In the case of the two Saints guys, you may get Alvin Kamara or Devin Neal back. So that makes it tough to say Audric Estime. Now, I will say this. If we find out that Woody Marks is out for whatever reason, then I think Jawar Jordan might be the best guy to get from a one-week situation. Because taking on the Raiders, what you just saw from him against the Cardinals was absolutely fantastic for a guy that did not play at all this season. He was inactive for every game until week 15, and he comes out and has that dominant 100-yard performance against the Cardinals. So I think if you were to tell me right now Marks was out, then I would go Jordan first. But at this point, we're expecting Marks to play, so I think you got to put Carter at the top of the list. In case of Corey Krosky-Merritt, he could be fantastic. I know this Eagles run defense has not been the same, but you are still talking about a team in the Commanders that is most likely down their left tackle. We know they're down their quarterback. And if they get behind, Corey Krosky-Merritt does not catch passes. So we're going to see a running back that's going to be very one-dimensional, very much a trap back. And it's been the case with Chris Rodriguez as well. So if they're not playing with a lead and he doesn't have the opportunity to break up some big runs, I don't think that happens against Philadelphia. That's why Corey Krosky-Merritt, Bill, is not at the top of the list.
And in the case of Jawar Jordan, you heard Adam say it at the beginning of the show, he's better than Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I completely whiffed on this in the show this morning, but never even mentioned Nick Chubb. I don't know if he didn't practice last week. He didn't play. He got a rib injury, but we do have to at least consider that. But I think, look, there's only 4 teams in the playoffs right now in most leagues. And additionally, some of them may not even need running backs. So you can take a little bit of a gamble and take a guy that maybe there's an injury situation, like Jalen Wright last week. And if it doesn't work out and the starter plays, then you pivot to someone else. I don't think all 6 of those running backs that we showed are going to get picked up. Dave, hypothetical for you. If R.J. Harvey does not play, how would you feel about Jaleel McLaughlin against the Jaguars, who have been fantastic against running backs?
Yeah, it's a tough matchup, and McLaughlin would get a good opportunity, but it wouldn't be the mother load. It certainly wouldn't be what R.J. Harvey's opportunities have been over the last couple of weeks. I would imagine that there would be a 2-way, if not a 3-way split among the running backs in Denver if that were to happen. And the other issue would be Bo Nix will run, and Bo Nix will just take more of the workload, put it on his shoulders, and the matchup is better for Bo Nix throwing the ball than it would be. Honestly, it's better than it would be for R.J. Harvey running the ball. This is a good week for Bo Nix as far as opportunities go, and hopefully the chance to have a week that resembles what he had in week number 15. So I wouldn't be that excited about McLaughlin if Harvey misses the game. He'd be more of a desperation situation type of running back.
Then I think let's talk about Michael Carter and who you might start him over. Okay, he's got the Falcons. Really haven't been that bad against running backs lately, but we like the matchup nonetheless. Would you start Michael Carter over either of the starting running backs in the Bucs-Panthers game, Bucky Irving and Rico Dowdle?
Definitely not Bucky Irving. He destroys the Panthers, and this Panthers run defense is terrible. Rico Dowdle, probably not, but they are very close.
Not close for me. I'd start the running backs over Carter.
Okay. How about Breece Hall at New Orleans or Michael Carter?
I'll take Michael Carter.
I'll take Breece.
Tyrone Tracy, or how about the running backs in the Minnesota-New York Giants game?
No, I like both those running back situations. The Giants' run defense is absolutely horrid, and what we've seen from Tyrone Tracy in the 3 healthy games that he's played since Mike Kafka's taken over, he's been absolutely dominant. So Tracy's in a much better spot.
Tracy, yeah. Now you look at Jones and Mason. I mean, they're basically splitting carries almost evenly the last 3 weeks. And that's the NFL these days. It's so frustrating. So that's the weird thing about this Carter situation is we don't really want to trust him, but is he going to get that much work and that many touches?
He's getting 15 touches, whether it's, 12 and 3 catches, whether it's what we saw last week. Again, they were losing, and he had 14 carries and 4 catches. They didn't even start the game. So we're still looking at a guy that's going to get probably in the neighborhood of around 14 carries and maybe 3 to 5 catches. And so in a better matchup this week, I think you're looking at a guy that's at least a high-end flex. And then when you start to compare him to some of the guys that you've already listed, I think, in the case of the Panthers and the Bucs, those guys are in a better spot. In the case of the Vikings and the Giants, those guys are in a better spot. But Breece Hall has been absolutely terrible, and the quarterback situation could be atrocious if it's Brady Cook again. You mentioned Ashton Genty, I think, at the top of the show. He's been terrible, and you're talking about him taking on the Texans now. Quinshon Judkins has had some great matchups, and he's failed to take advantage of them. I think Michael Carter's in a better spot. So, to me, he's a low-end number 2 running back, and I would start him over Amari Hampton. I start him over Kenneth Walker. I think these guys are just in better situations right now than what Michael Carter is looking at this point.
I was going to say, yeah, I will. I'm trying to pick him up in a league where I have Hampton and Harvey, unfortunately. So, I can see myself starting Michael Carter this week. It's pretty unbelievable. And all right, that's pretty much it for Michael Carter. Any other running backs to talk about? Like Kenneth Gainwell, Dave. Kenneth Gainwell again at Detroit. How do you feel about him? He's 83% rostered, but he's pretty relevant right now. How do you feel about him?
Number 2 running back, especially in full PPR. Maybe he's closer to a high-end flex in non-PPR. It's not the best matchup because we know that Lions' run defense is typically good, despite what the Rams did last week. Steelers are going to have a hard time running the football in the game. And if they're trailing, Gainwell has proven that he's the better pass-catching back. You could make the argument, Adam, that he's their number 1 wide receiver just based on the targets and the catches that he has compared to everybody else in Pittsburgh. And so I'm interested in that, especially in leagues where catches count. He could have 15 full PPR points.
All right. Well, we have a lot more to talk about today, including the quarterbacks. Boy, you were waiting to start Patrick Mahomes against the Titans in your fantasy semifinals. You can't do that, but maybe you just start Gardner Minshew. We'll talk about the best options at quarterback on the waiver wire when we come back. Well, if you watched our show this morning or listened to our show this morning, you know that this is a week of quarterbacks that we don't want to trust who happen to have great matchups. Isn't that always fun? And sometimes it works out. I mean, it worked out for J.J. McCarthy last week, for example. It worked out for Kirk Cousins last week, for example. Will it work out for them again in Week 16? Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. All right, so let's take a look at the... wait a second, just kidding. Let's play some Who Has More. Keeping you guys on your toes. Never trust me. Who has more? Quarterback related here. Who has more fantasy points per game since Tyler Shuck became the starter in Week 9? Jalen Hurts or Tyler Shuck?
Oh, I mean, Hurts had that stinker, so it's got to be Shuck.
I'm still going to say Hurts.
Oh, Dave with the win. 1-0. Okay, next one. Who has more games with more than 25 fantasy points in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues? Aaron Rodgers or J.J. McCarthy?
McCarthy.
I think it's McCarthy.
Dave wins 2-1. You guys both got that one right.
What was
McCarthy
the difference in fantasy points per game between Hurts and Shuck?
18.5 to 17.5. Jalen Hurts.
I think you're wrong.
I don't think that's right.
I'm going to double check that.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right to me.
Weeks 9 through 15. I'm looking at it right now. You could double check all you want. I got CBS Sports on my side. All right, let's get to the quarterbacks here. And Jamey, your favorite is Gardner Minshew. This is an interesting conversation that we had this morning. Is you got there's 5 guys or so that could be in really any order. But here it is: Minshew, Bryce Young, Tyler Shuck, Kirk Cousins, J.J. McCarthy, and then I don't think anyone's going to lobby for Mariota as number 1. But go ahead, break this list down, Jamey.
Well, I think you start to look at, okay, they all have great matchups. You know, Minshew gets the Titans, Young gets the Bucks, Shuck gets the Jets. They just gave up over 50 fantasy points to Trevor Lawrence. Cousins against the Cardinals and McCarthy against the Giants. They're all fantastic matchups when you talk about those guys. But how do you see the game going? I think that's what you have to play it out. And so in the case of Minshew, for me, the Titans' run defense has been very solid. The Titans' pass defense has been absolutely absent, non-existent. It's been just fun to see these quarterbacks, as we saw. Brock Purdy was my start of the week last week. He went nuts against them. I think Minshew's going to be the type of quarterback that we see him all the time he's on the field, where he's going to have the opportunity to throw it all over the place and take advantage of that Titans defense. Now, again, I like all 5 of these guys as desperation quarterbacks for Week 16. Hopefully, you don't have to rely on these guys, but as we know, we just saw Patrick Mahomes, who was 100% started. So I think a lot of people, even though he's been struggling, could have still advanced if they don't have a good enough backup quarterback. So I love the matchup for Minshew. I love the setup for Minshew. I think he's going to have an opportunity. As good as the Titans' run defense has been, their pass rush has not been there. So with the Chiefs dealing with their offensive line issues, that really shouldn't come into play in this game. And so, again, they're all literally back to back, 5 in a row. I think they're all very good desperation plays. But the ceiling, while it could be great, could be 20-plus points for all 5 of these guys, we could also see 15 points or less. And in the case of Cousins and McCarthy in particular, I think their run games could be really good this week because the Giants' run defense, as we saw from the Commanders of all teams, was great. You know, Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt ran on them. So I think this could be an Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason type of game for the Vikings. And certainly in the case for Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, they can run on that Cardinals defense as well. So I don't love those 2 as much as the other 3, mostly because I think their run games could be good.
Well, Dave, you had Patrick Mahomes in I think half of your remaining leagues, and you had nothing but buys in those leagues. So you are
the first person that lost during the bye weeks in fantasy football.
Yeah, so what are you going to do?
I'm going to look for J.J. McCarthy first and foremost because I agree with Jamey. These are all quarterbacks that are risky. They all have great matchups. They all have low floors. But I want the ones that have the high upside. And what I've seen over the last 2 weeks from this Vikings offense with J.J. McCarthy has been eye-opening. It's been great to see McCarthy getting the ball out quickly, using his targets, not named Justin Jefferson. Think about this. He's been north of 24 fantasy points each of his last 2 games, not really using Justin Jefferson that much. So imagine what he can do against the Giants and that weak pass defense when he and Justin Jefferson inevitably get on the same page. He's my favorite of this group. I think he's got the most upside, and I think Tyler Shuck is second best. He doesn't have the most upside. He does have the dreamboat matchup against the Jets, but he's provided the safest floor. We've already talked about what his fantasy points per game is since he became a starter. I actually think his floor is higher than that. I think it's around 20 fantasy points. He might be the best runner on the Saints this week, and obviously their best passer in their receiving core is good. It's got Chris Olave, and it might be better if Devon Vele plays as well. So those are going to be the 2 quarterbacks I'm going to look for first and foremost. Kirk Cousins would be higher on the list if I thought that he had a chance to throw a lot more. I know he's getting Drake London back. I know he's got an awesome matchup as well, but there could be a situation where he doesn't get the job done because the running backs, plural, for Atlanta, crushed the Arizona Cardinals in Week 16, and it renders him to 150 yards and 1 touchdown.
And how do you feel, Dave, about C.J. Stroud against the Raiders?
Love him because I think that it's a great matchup, and we've got question marks with that run game, and that's even going to be the case if Woody Marks plays. I think push comes to shove, the Texans are realizing that they need to have an effective C.J. Stroud if they're going to go anywhere in the playoffs. And they've got this amazing defense. Their offensive line, when you compare them to other offensive lines at this stage in the NFL season, they look pretty good. And I think that we could see C.J. Stroud be the catalyst of this offense in Houston. I think the Texans lean into that. This is a matchup where they can do that. And I think you could see C.J. Stroud as a borderline top 12 quarterback. If he were out there along with these other 5 quarterbacks, he would be my favorite.
You know, last week we had good quarterbacks with bad matchups, right? We had Dak against Minnesota. We had Jordan Love at Denver. We had Mahomes against the Chargers and Herbert against the Chiefs.
Yeah. What do they all have in common?
We had Drake May against Buffalo.
What do they all have in common?
And we, of course, had Brissett at Houston, right? What did they have in common? I don't know.
Well, they all stunk except for Brissett, who got his numbers in garbage time. So the matchups
really
matter at this point in the season.
They do, but I don't know that we really have that this week. I think Trevor Lawrence, who has what Love had last week at Denver.
Yeah.
That one comes to mind. But does anyone else?
Dak's got a tough one too. Yep. Thank you, Jamey.
Yeah. So, but I don't know that. Are we going to the waiver wire? Because for Lawrence, I think I would. I'm not going to the waiver wire for Dak. How you guys feel about that?
You certainly can make the case for Lawrence. You know, I think we've seen this Denver defense. You mentioned that they're down one of their safeties, so that's part of this. Lawrence is playing really well right now. And you also, a couple weeks ago, Marcus Mariota did very well against this Broncos defense. Like, I don't know if they've been the same Broncos defense. Like, they had a good game against Jordan Love, who lost his receiver in the middle of the game. They lost their star defensive player in the middle of the game. Like, that, I think, could easily throw off a team. So it's not safe to trust Lawrence, but just as we've alluded to, like, McCarthy, if he doesn't get multiple touchdowns, could be awful. Cousins could be this was his best game since he's taken over the starting job from Michael Penix. It was against a bad Bucs defense. Bryce Young, we know, has 2 games with over 20 fantasy points in his last 6 or 7. Gardner Minshew's Gardner Minshew. You know, like, there's just a lot of flaws with all of these guys that I think you just say, okay, who's playing the best at the quarterback position right now. And Trevor Lawrence has to be in the top 5 or 6 guys that you're just talking about. Forget about fantasy, just in reality. And so do you really want to get that on your bench, put that on your bench at a time where he carried you? So if he does half of what he did in Week 15, that's probably still a top 5 quarterback. I'm still going to stick with I don't love Trevor Lawrence, but I'm going to stick with him over these guys.
Can you name the one quarterback this year that's put up 20 or more fantasy points in Denver against the Broncos?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know Adam can. You know?
Daniel Jones? No, Jackson Dart.
You got it. Yeah. It is Jackson Dart. So I see where you're coming from with Trevor Lawrence, and if you've been riding him this far, I probably wouldn't make the waiver move to start J.J. McCarthy out of him. I think volume will be in his favor, and his receiving core is finally healthy. But boy, am I going to be nervous sweating that one out.
Yeah. I mean, look, Jordan Love threw 7 touchdown passes in his previous 2 games. He scored 34 points at Detroit, 25 points against Chicago. So he was on a roll. And he did throw 40 passes for 276 yards, which is good. I think that's what you're hoping for here. The Jaguars have been killing teams. They've been playing with a lead for the last 6 games, basically. Now they might be trailing and get some pass attempts. But it'll be a tough call. That'll be probably the toughest one. By the way, when I said go to the waiver wire I'm not saying you drop Lawrence by any means. I'm not even saying that you start these guys over Lawrence, but you maybe pick someone up and just give yourself a few days to think about it, right? And see how you feel on Saturday or Sunday. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll talk about wide receivers on the waiver wire when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. Who needs a wide receiver this week? Let's help you out here on Fantasy Football Today. So our top waiver wide receivers are facing each other, hopefully anyway. Jaden Reed, he'll play. Luther Burden, we don't know if he'll play, but we're hopeful because Luther Burden's just been really, really good. He tore it up in half, basically, on Sunday. So we've got Jaden Reed, Luther Burden, Jalen Coker. Those are the top 3. Jamey, is there any enthusiasm about the waiver wire wide receivers for Week 16?
I think just in terms of 3 receiver leagues that there should be, but in 2 receiver leagues, probably not so much. You're down most likely Davante Adams. You're down most likely Christian Watson. Those have been very good fantasy options of late, certainly Davante Adams the majority of the season. That being said, these guys are not going to give you the production that Davante Adams gave you and probably not going to give you the production of Christian Watson. So what you're hoping for is that in the case of, let's say, Jaden Reed, if there is no Watson, that he steps up and gets a bump in targets. He's been a little bit conservative in the first 2 games since coming back from that extended absence with the collarbone and foot injuries, but now they need him. They need Matthew Golds, another guy that should be on this list. He's part of the column, but just not listed individually. But I think you look at both Packers receivers as guys that will get bumps. In the case of Luther Burden, you've seen 2 solid games without Rome Odunze, including one against the Packers where he had 11 PPR points the first game that Odunze missed, which was in Week 14. But how healthy will he be if he does play? And we're talking about a game on Saturday where they're calling him day-to-day, did not finish the Week 15 game against Cleveland. That was a blowout. So who knows if he could have come back in if that was a more competitive situation. So I'm excited about Burden. I think there's a huge opportunity here. I'm excited about Jaden Reed, same thing. And in the case of Jalen Coker, look, you're talking about a guy that the last 2 games has scored a touchdown each of those 2 outings. We know this was somebody that a lot of fantasy managers were excited about preseason. We just haven't seen it. I think we're going to get a potential shootout between the Bucs and the Panthers based on how the defenses operate for these 2 teams. And so if that's the case, we've seen Bryce Young go back to that game against Atlanta a few weeks ago where he had to throw the ball 30-plus times, and we saw his receiving core step up. Coker could be one of these guys that benefits in a big way in a surprise situation. So we know it's the fantasy semifinals. You don't want to go with a lot of ifs. But again, if you're missing Adams, you're missing Watson, you're down maybe some of these running backs looking for a flex play, I think Jalen Coker steps up. I know Jaden Reed will have to step up. And Luther Burden has shown you that he can perform at a high level when given the opportunity. I just wish he was 100% healthy.
All right, Dave, same question to you. Excited about anybody on the waiver wire?
Mildly excited. I don't know if there's anybody that I'm going to race to start. They're all flex considerations, and Burden is my favorite of the group. But everybody else, I almost feel the same way about the receivers as I do the quarterbacks. They all feel kind of low floorish, so I'm looking for the ones that have the highest ceilings. And in that case, I think a name that we have to consider, again, the last time we did this, it did not work out, is Adonai Mitchell of the Jets. We saw him get a lot of targets last week. He looked like he was on the same page with Brady Cook. It was really impressive. And now, I mean, every game the Jets are going to have, it's going to be the same great game script. They're going to fall behind. They're going to have to throw. At least this week it's against New Orleans. It's not that tough of a matchup. And I think Adonai Mitchell can, fingers crossed, be the team leader in targets, come through on a bunch of short, intermediate, and maybe a couple of deep balls as well. He was a threat inside the 10 last week, caught a touchdown from Brady Cook. And maybe, we don't know it yet, but the Jets might have Tyrod Taylor back under center. And if they've got him, that helps the outlook for Adonai Mitchell. So if I'm not going to get Luther Burden first and foremost off the waiver wire because I'm worried about an injury, maybe he's already rostered, Adonai Mitchell would be the second name that I would go after, followed by Jalen Coker for the reasons that Jamey talked about. I just wish Coker was getting more volume from game to game.
Not Jaden Reed for you?
Not Jaden Reed for me. I think he's safe. 10 PPR points should be good to go, but I don't see him having the same type of high ceiling as those other receivers do.
All right. If I have Khalil Shakir at Cleveland, am I going to the waiver wire, Jamey?
I would start Reed over him. I would start Burden over him, and I would start Coker over him, yes.
Dave, if I have Stephon Diggs, am I going to the waiver wire?
I think it would behoove you to at least look at your other options in this case. I don't know if I'm ready to start Mitchell over Diggs, but you know what, Adam? They've got the same floor. They could both go out this week and have 3 catches for 40 yards, and that's it. In fact, Mitchell has been the better receiver than Diggs over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, and he plays more. I mean, Diggs might play half the run and half the routes.
I'm talking myself into it right now. I think I would start Mitchell over Diggs.
All right, well, that's you talk. I don't want you to blame me for talking you into it.
Well, you've already convinced me that Jawar Jordan is the superior running back to Christian McCaffrey on this show.
I couldn't really get a good wide receiver who has more, but if you'd like, we can indulge in America's 7th favorite fantasy football-related game show. Who has more receiving yards this season? Luther Burden or DJ Moore?
DJ Moore.
Yeah, no, I'm going to say Burden.
Oh, Dave, you stink. It's obviously DJ Moore. All right, Dave loses
By how
that
many
round.
yards?
Like 100 more? Let me see.
You're the host. You don't even know the number?
I forgot it.
I did confirm his...
Bob Barker never forgot anything on The Price is Right. This is a trap.
I did confirm his quarterback one. He was right.
He was? Mm-hmm. All right, good. Good for you, Adam.
How could I have been wrong about that? I was looking right at it. DJ Moore, 567 yards. Luther Burden, 479 yards.
Yeah, shame on me for not knowing that. Good on you. Okay.
Yeah, right. I mean, most people know that.
You have another one so I can redeem myself, maybe?
By the way, Sean McVay says he's not ruling out Devontae Adams yet.
I saw that. Man, it seems very unlikely that Adams is going to play.
Yeah.
Is there any interest in a Rams wide receiver if Adams is out?
Who's that guy that they have? Oh, his name is Puka Nacua. I think I'd start him. I don't know if I can trust any of the other receivers that they've got in LA, from Kanata Mumfree, Jordan Whittington, Tutu Atwell, who they gave $10 million to, and he has like 5 catches on the season. I'm not ready to start those guys. It's easy to start Adonai Mitchell, Stephon Diggs, the other name, Jalen Coker, all those guys ahead of those ancillary, Rams receivers.
Okay, Dave, you ready for redemption?
Yeah.
Who has more touchdown catches this year? Puka Nacua, who you claim is on the Rams.
Yes, he is.
Or Torrey Horton?
I think it's Horton.
Wow.
It might be a tie. I'm going to go with Horton.
I'm going to go Puka.
Dave, you stink. You are the worst. Who has more terrible guesses today? Nobody other than Dave. It is obviously Puka Nacua. 6-5. A landslide victory. Yeah. And yet Puka Nacua is the number 1 wide receiver per game by 0.2 of fantasy point over Jackson Smith and Jigba. We've gotten good production from the number 2 Broncos wide receiver recently. So Pat Bryant's available in a ton of leagues. Troy Franklin's available in about 25 to 30% of leagues.
Less than that.
Jamey, you're right. He's available in 21% of leagues. Jamey, are you targeting the Broncos number 2 receiver if available?
I think a lot of people dropped Troy Franklin, and what we saw from him, while his route participation didn't change, his snap count didn't necessarily change, his targets changed. And I think anytime you see that, this is kind of why when you look at snap counts, what matters most. When the guy's on the field, is he getting opportunities? And I think that's what we saw from Troy Franklin. So if Bryant's out again, I think you've got to consider him a borderline number 2 receiver, certainly a starter in 3 receiver leagues, better than anybody that we mentioned off the waiver wire. His body of work for the majority of the season was very solid. I don't know why they went away from him as much as they did in those 2 games when Bryant was getting more opportunities. But I think you just look at it and say, okay, where's the strength of the Jacksonville defense? It's in their run defense. They may have a running back issue. Throw the ball around a little bit more. Bo Nix relying on a guy that he trusts. I think Troy Franklin proved himself that he deserves to be in those situations more times than not. And so, yes, number 3 receiver for sure.
All right. Well, tight end is a really, really interesting position, and we are going to talk about it a lot when we come back, not just who to add, but who to sit. Tyler Warren, Brock Bowers, we really sitting these guys? We'll tell you when we come back on Fantasy Football Today as we look at waiver wire tight ends. All right, we're back on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. And it's really been such an interesting year at tight end because, man, I feel like every week we've got so many good tight ends on the waiver wire. And look, if you're in a 10-team league, it's just absolutely loaded. But let's be real. The production has tapered off a little bit, right? Juwan Johnson was hot. He's not really a great option right now. Oronde Gadsden was hot. He's on the list this week, but he's obviously struggled with the entire offense. And there are other examples. However, Jamey, this is like a really exciting week, especially in the shallower leagues where you might have a Kyle Pitts available or a Darren Waller available. But the lay of the land at tight end, how's it looking right now?
I mean, I think it looks good. You know, you have options, and again, as we've talked about several times this season, you don't necessarily just have to go pick up a running back to replace a running back. You can pick up a tight end to replace a running back and use it as a flex. And in the case of a guy like Parkinson, a great matchup coming off a very strong game. We know Devontae Adams may not play Thursday night. Seattle's just been very bad against tight ends the majority of the season. Oronde Gadsden, you said, yes, he's cooled off of late, but he's played 2 games without Quentin Johnson, and in both of those games, 2 of his better performances. Another solid matchup against Dallas. Theo Johnson's been getting plenty of targets, 12 targets in his last 2 games with Jackson Dart, so there's an opportunity for him to have another good game. Tough matchup against Minnesota, but could certainly be useful in deeper leagues. And the name that's next in Isaiah Likely, I know a lot of people are going to puke when they see this, but you look at it, we said this on Sunday night. The Ravens had 40 plays in that game. Lamar Jackson threw 12 times. Had they thrown the ball more, had that been a more competitive game from an offensive standpoint for Baltimore, we probably see Likely or Mark Andrews or maybe both taking advantage of that defense. Well, we've seen this Patriots defense struggle against tight ends. Last week, Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid beat them up. So I think Likely, if you do not get the opportunity to pick up somebody like Parkinson, you can still stick with him, and I think he'll certainly play better if the Patriots offense shows up like it does. And TJ Hockenson, let's give him some credit. As J.J. McCarthy's gotten better, so has the rapport with Hockenson. He's been 9+ PPR points in 3 straight games, 2 of those with J.J. McCarthy, and coming off a solid game. Great matchup this week against the Giants. So I think you can see a situation where Hockenson, and in a desperate situation, the latter 2 would be more desperate situations, but in the case of Colby Parkinson and Oronde Gadsden, I would start them both over Harold Fannin this week with his matchup against the Buffalo Bills.
All right, Dave, how much do you like Colby Parkinson this week? Because like I said earlier, actually in 2 leagues, I put in claims for him to start, not to drop Tyler Warren, but to start over Tyler Warren. It's kind of like a no-brainer to me, to be quite honest with you. But how are you feeling about Parkinson?
It is a no-brainer, and you know how I feel about Tyler Warren. I've loved that guy, but really the last 2 weeks, ever since Daniel Jones went down, I mean, you could throw a rock and hit anybody on the Colts, and their numbers have gone down, and I think that's going to continue this week against San Francisco. I'm in an expert league. I fell for the trap with Isaiah Likely. He was the tight end that I was hoping to ride out the rest of the season with. I tried to make a play using half of my remaining fab, 15% of my fab, to get Colby Parkinson. And the winning bid was more than double what I bid for Colby Parkinson. Somebody wanted him a whole lot more. Congratulations, Christopher Harris. You got Colby Parkinson. I hope I don't play you in the finals of that league. So I'm kind of stuck at tight end, but that's how I feel about Parkinson. The red zone role is only going to expand if Devontae Adams doesn't play, and I think the matchup is favorable too. So I think you should view him as a top 10 tight end this week.
Couple guys that are just above the threshold, Jamey, of 65%. They're 66% rostered. You got Dalton Schultz going up against the Raiders, who are 4th best against tight ends, even after a bad performance last week against Goddard. And you have Colson Loveland facing the Packers. Do you like them this week?
I do. You know, I think in the case of Loveland, he scored a touchdown in 2 of his last 3. One of those was against the Packers. If there is no Odunze and no Burden, then you hope to see a little bit of a spike in targets. And so this Packers defense is going to be shell-shocked. They lose Micah Parsons. They're not going to be the same. Pass rush certainly not going to be the same. So Caleb Williams should have more time to throw, and I think Loveland's going to be a big priority for this Bears passing attack. The other name you mentioned was who? Darren Waller? Or Dalton?
Oh, Colson Loveland.
Oh, well, you said Loveland. Who else?
Oh, Schultz.
Schultz. I mean, look, 11.1 PPR points in 5 of his last 7 games. This is not an easy matchup against the Raiders, but Dallas Goedert just lit them up. This Raiders defense has shown that they're very good against tight ends, but I think if you test them, and I'm sure C.J. Stroud and Dalton Schultz will test them, he could still be in that low-end starting range. So I think if you look at it from a ceiling perspective, Parkinson higher ceiling, Waller higher ceiling, Schultz safer floor. We've just seen him be very solid. Now, he has struggled when the matchups have been tough. You look at that Buffalo game, for example, not a great game. The Kansas City game, not a great game. But I think in this matchup, even though the numbers suggest that the Raiders have been good against tight ends, I don't think they're as good as those other defenses. So I still think you can use Schultz as a low-end starter.
Yeah, how do you guys feel about Waller? Because he did nothing. He had, one catch in the first 3 quarters.
Right.
And then he ended up with a huge game. But he's going to run about 60% of the routes, it seems. It's not terrible. And I think he looks pretty good out there. So Jamey just mentioned he's got a pretty high ceiling. You think there's a good floor with Darren Waller?
He's had at least 9.2 PPR points in 4 of the 6 games that he's finished. Some ridiculous upside, and I think you have to buy into it. A, because we've seen it. B, because the Dolphins absolutely use him in this red zone role. And C is for Cincinnati. They're taking on the Bengals this week. And what the Baltimore Ravens didn't do, I would imagine the Miami Dolphins will do, particularly if that game ends up being a high-scoring shootout. The Bengals can't go without 0 points 2 games in a row, can they? I think Joe Burrow bounces back. I think they're going to hold up their end of the bargain. That's going to force the Dolphins to stay active on the offensive side. It can't be just the Devon Achane show. And when they get inside the 20, that's when Darren Waller wakes up. It's almost like they go to him on the bench, they shake him on the shoulder a little bit and say, you got to get out there. It's your time to shine. And then what does he do? He goes out there, catches a touchdown, maybe 2. I think you buy into that upside, the matchup, the role. It's all there for Darren Waller.
I want to talk about Brock Bowers here. And so he's facing the Texans. They just gave up 37.4 fantasy points to Trey McBride. Before that, though, they were really good. Travis Kelce the week before had 1 catch for 8 yards. The week before that, Tyler Warren had 3 catches, 22 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. Evan Ingram had a 0 catch game in week 9. George Kittle had 4 for 43 and a touchdown. I think you've got 2 tight ends with more than 5 targets all year against the Houston Texans. And you got Bowers coming off a horrible game. So, Jamey, how many tight ends in general would you start over Brock Bowers this week?
He's 5th for me. So Kyle Pitts, if he's still on waivers, I would start him over him. But otherwise, it's McBride, it's Kittle, it's Pitts, and Kelce. Those are the only 4 that I would consider starting over him. I think in the case of Bowers, you have to hope, and it's a hope at this point because the quarterback situation is so bad. The offensive line is a train wreck for the Raiders. He's overcome some of that so far this season. But with Kenny Pickett, it did not look good last week. That being said, these waiver wire tight ends, we've seen it. Isaiah likely being the prime example last week. They are waiver wire guys for a reason. They've been struggling at points in the season. They've had some spike games. I just would feel sick to my stomach if Brock Bowers has one of those type of games and you sat him. And so you got to be 100% sure. You got to really love Waller, really love Parkinson, really love one of these guys. Warren's different because Warren has had some solid production. He's really started to, the slow decline for him has been easy to see. And so when you look at the matchup on top of what he's dealing with here, I'd be a little bit more concerned about him more so than Bowers. I just think the talent level is just too good for what Brock Bowers can do.
The limitations for both offenses are also significant, but it's worse in Indianapolis with Phillip Rivers under center. Sorry, Phillip, don't hate me for saying that, but it's worse for him and for Tyler Warren than it is for Bowers. And then in the case of Trey McBride last week, monster game, you said it, a lot of it came in garbage time. And garbage time could happen around the end of the second quarter and on in that game against Houston. Houston is that good. I don't think they'll necessarily pitch a shutout just the way that Philadelphia did. I think that Brock Bowers could see double-digit targets in this game and come up with good point production for fantasy.
All right, well, when we come back, it's my favorite segment. We get to hear from you. We'll answer your questions up next on Fantasy Football Today. We are back for our final Tuesday segment here. All right, Mikey, sounds crazy, but would you consider dropping Dak Prescott or Joe Burrow for Jacoby Brissett?
I mean, if that's the only players you could drop to get Brissett, I like him better than both Dak and Burrow, and I like him even next week when he takes on the Cincinnati Bengals. So if it's a redraft league and you don't have to worry about, somebody else picking these guys up long term, I probably would hold on to Dak and drop Burrow just because who knows what his mindset is if they lose this game to Miami. Does he shut it down for the final 2 weeks of the season, the final week of the fantasy season? So I would probably keep Dak, pick up Brissett, drop Burrow, and see what happens in week 17.
Man, all three of these guys have such great matchups next week. Dak's at Washington, and you said Brissett's playing the Bengals, right? Burrow and Brissett are facing each other?
Yeah, that should be an awesome game for fantasy. The thing that I'm nervous about, and this is why I wouldn't want to drop either quarterback, am I dropping somebody that might make another one of my opponents better? And am I going to go up against Joe Burrow against the Cardinals in Week 17 or Dak Prescott?
You might be going up against Jacoby Brissett that way, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. So I like Brissett the best of the three. I think I'd drop Dak, though. I think he would be the one I'd let go of.
All right, what do we have next? Would you start Matthew Stafford on Thursday with confidence or Jackson Dart in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues?
I'd go with Stafford. I know that not having Devonta Adams there should ding him, and it's a tough matchup. But Jackson Dart, just the injury risk on top of the matchup for him, makes me a little bit more nervous.
I agree. I'd go Stafford. I know the rushing, totals would probably sway you toward Dart in a 4-point for passing touchdown league, but Stafford could easily throw 3 touchdowns. I know that the matchup against Seattle is tough. Don't look at what they did last week in terms of shutting down Phillip Rivers. I mean, this is what Minnesota has not allowed multiple touchdown passes since facing Jared Goff in Week 9. That includes Lamar Jackson, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, Sam Darnold, Jaden Daniels for the start of that game, and Dak Prescott. They've just been eliminating quarterback production. So for me, it's Stafford.
Next. Okay, would you start Michael Carter or any of the waiver wire guys over Ashton Genty?
Oh, I'd consider it. It's really close because Genty has been so bad. Do we know the format? Because if it's non-PPR, I think I'm there. If it's half or full PPR, look, that's how Genty's been getting his numbers, is through the air, with the rare occasion that he falls into the end zone. This is a tough matchup for him, and the game script is definitely going to go against him. Carter might have maybe 2 or 3 fewer catches. I'm talking myself into Carter right now.
So McLaughlin, no. If Woody Marks and Nick Chubb are out, Jordan 100% yes.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And Carter 100% yes for me. I think you're just looking at offensive environment right now, matchup. I think both those favor Carter. He'll be involved in the passing. He has 2 games this season, Michael Carter does, with double-digit touches. In both those games, he's been over 12 PPR points. Ashton Genty's been begging to get 12 PPR points for basically a month.
Yeah, and Zonovan Knight had 3 to 4 catches in 4 straight games. And Michael Carter had catches on top of that. All right, pick 2 from this list. Harvey, Marks, Michael Wilson, Hampton, McMillan.
Wilson's a must.
If Harrison's out.
Yeah, correct. That's fair. And assuming that Harvey is out, I'm going to lean toward Marks over McMillan and Hampton.
I think that's probably the smart play to go. It would not surprise me if McMillan takes advantage of this Bucs secondary. They're just so bad right now, and I do think we could see Carolina having to throw. So I wouldn't be opposed to Teterow and McMillan, but I think the safe play is the running backs along with Michael Wilson. So Harvey over Marks if both are active. If Harvey's out, Marks. If Marks is out, Harvey.
Is that our last one, or do we have one more? We have one more. A quarterback and a tight end. We got about 30 seconds left, guys. Stroud, Brissett, Caleb, or McCarthy, Pitts, Ferguson, Fannin.
Brissett and Pitts.
Yeah, it's not even close for me.
Okay, last question from me. Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
The Rams.
Denver.
Who'd you say, Dave?
Denver, the Broncos.
Denver? All right, fine. I'm going to go with a team that's not even in the playoffs right now, the Ravens. Thanks, everybody. That's it for Fantasy Football Today. Check out the Fantasy Football Today podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. Big thanks to Dave and Jamey, and of course to all of you for watching and listening. I'm Adam Aizer. Good luck in Week 16.